Within the North Vietnam capital city of Hanoi lies the French-built 20th century prison compound called Hoa Lo. It occupies an entire city block, and it quickly became known among Allied troops as the Hanoi Hilton, where U.S. prisoners were held in this corner of the camp. In 1967, POWs nicknamed sections of the camp. The original Hilton became Little Vegas, and the adjacent courtyard was now known as Heartbreak, since that was where most of the interrogations were held.
And I think that's when it really hit me. I found myself in this filthy, tiny cell, high ceiling, a tiny yellow light bulb glowing very high, but not really giving much light. Filthy, greasy walls, and a concrete slab for a bed. Ankle stocks at the foot of the slab. Big, huge, heavy iron manacle that came down across the top of the ankle stocks and would lock with a big rusty padlock. A tiny window very high in the back wall with a double row of iron bars, and all I could see through the window were the shards of filthy broken glass embedded in the concrete on top of the 16-foot wall that surrounded the entire prison. And that cell just reeked of the human misery that had been there before me.
Jerry Coffey was the 65th prisoner taken by the North Vietnamese. Torture was the norm during the first few months and years that he spent at Hoa Lo, and he recalls two distinctly personal incidents.
I hadn't really learned how to cope with pain yet. I would learn better in the future, but I hadn't learned yet. And somehow this went on for, my best guess, maybe 35, 40 minutes, until finally they stuffed this big dirty rag in my mouth, and one of the guards shoved it in with his rifle barrel, and the sight on the end of the barrel broke off half of one of my teeth.
Treatment of Americans by the North Vietnamese was way below Geneva Convention agreed-to standards. Their guards were told to treat the POWs as gangsters, not just prisoners of war. Interrogations were done round the clock, with heavy physical beatings being the norm. What food they got was mostly just soup, with an occasional helping of what the VC told them was pumpkin.
The food was pretty mundane, actually, and very monotonous. They seemed to feed us whatever was in season at a given time. And for example, pumpkin was one of our staples. We had pumpkin soup for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 months in a row, as long as it was in season. And when I say pumpkin soup, I don't mean the nice kind of thick seasoned stuff that you get sometimes in a restaurant. I mean simply chunks of pumpkin chopped up and boiled, and that was our soup. And then with each feeding, which happened twice a day, we were fed twice a day, about 10:30 in the morning and maybe again about 2:30 in the afternoon, and that was it, long time from 2:30 to 10 through the night. So sometimes they'd give us a little bit of bread, and we'd try to save a piece of bread for a midnight snack, so to speak. But along with the soup would come a side plate with whatever was in the soup, but fried up a little bit with some pork fat, and then usually a bowl of rice. And sometimes later on, the rice was replaced with a small loaf of bread that came about so big with crust all the way around it. As I say when I speak, wherever they kept the flour for that bread in those old dungeon-like kitchens of Hoa Lo prison, there were bugs and weevils and roaches and flies, so we'd always get a little protein supplement with our bread, and it was good we could use that.
And then, although feeling awful, both physically and mentally, Jerry Coffey found something in his cell that was to change his attitude forever.